in my bag. So soft and so tender. Daddy in the kitchen and he told me, son, listen. He said, you don't have to play the part that they wrote for you. You don't have to play the part. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the Soft and Tender interview series. I'm your host, Rich Robbins. The goal of this series is to sit down with young black men and go over stories about fatherhood. We want to really normalize stories about black fathers that are involved in our lives, black father figures that are involved in our lives, to really debunk the narrative that black men are not involved in their kids' lives, as simple as that. Talking about our primary father figures in our lives, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be a biological connection, right? But who was the primary father figure in your life? Samir, we can start with you.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that my father was there and is still here. My biological father, Big Mo, even though he's 5'10", Mohammed Idrissi, an immigrant from Africa, North Africa, Libya, came to the UK, met my mother, and had 5 beautiful children. So a constant in my life still, even though all my family is back in the UK, and I probably see him once a year or so now. But I know I got the love and support based on the upbringing that I had.
Shout out Big Mo. What about you, Matt?
Oh yeah, my biological father as well. I was blessed to have my father in my life. From day one, I have an older sister and a younger brother, and so he fathered all 3 of us, you know what I'm saying, held us down. And then I have father figures, I grew up in the church, so I had father figures at my church too, and in my church family that, played important roles in my life while also my father was there. So had the at-home dad, of course, and then also when I was outside in the world, I had people who helped me down as well as father figures.
Man, that's beautiful. Definitely relates to that.
My biological dad is also in my life. I had teenage parents, so they had me at 18. My parents have been together since they were 17, so I always had him as a father figure, but then I also played 3 sports growing up, like football, basketball, and track, so I would have coaches who were, in a sense, father figures in that way. And then my older cousins, I would say, would be like a father figure.
That's great. So what were the dynamics like in the household, particularly between you and dad? What were those dynamics like with your dad being a young father?
My parents were raised by their grandparents. And in terms of the dynamic, it's really interesting because I'm, I guess, technically Gen Z, born in 97, but Gen Z, millennial cusp. And my parents are older millennial Gen X. So my mom, people see me and my mom or my dad and they think that's my siblings. Or they think my mom is my girlfriend or my dad is my brother. And then my mom and my dad get the same pop culture references as me. We watch the same cartoons growing up. So in a sense, I'm the oldest child, but I feel like the middle child because my parents feel like my siblings.
That's crazy.
And my siblings feel like my kids. So it's really interesting dynamic that I think I had.
I'd say your stereotypical household in regards to both parents being present. That my mum was a little bit more of the loving, caring in terms of the emotional way, and my dad probably loving and caring in his own right, but certainly tough love, and if and when needed, more of the disciplinary. So nothing too dissimilar.
I would have to agree with that in terms of the dynamics of the disciplinary. Now, my mom would probably beg to differ and be like,
Mine too.
She had a heavy hand too,
yeah.
but at the end of the day, it was like Pops was the one that was like, if I got in trouble at school or something like that, you gotta talk to the boss at some point, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
My dad, I just did the math in my head. My dad was 25 when they had me, and my mom was 23. Very recently, it hit me. I'm just like, okay, I've surpassed the age that my parents were when they had me. My mother strayed, stepped back from discipline kind of altogether. She was very non-confrontational. She would be the one to talk to you, you know what I'm saying? And then when the talking didn't work, it would be, and I know for a fact, she even winced when my father would discipline us, you know what I'm saying? There was definitely a disconnect there between the two of them with how discipline should work.
You said that your parents were those were your homies. You know, I vividly remember my dad in several conversations being like, "We are not friends." I'm your dad, I'm your father, and you're the child. So don't get it twisted. But that kind of had it backfired in some cases. Especially the older that I got, because I was like, I need more of a friend out of you than I do like, you know, that disciplinary kind of heavy hand that you raised me with, you know. And I think that's kind of where I was talking about watching them grow up, because now, totally different. Now we kind of are, I don't know if he would still, you know, be like, oh yeah, we are more homies, but there is more of like it's less about discipline and more about just wisdom. What kind of wisdom can I share with you? You know, how you doing in life? You know, is there anything that I can help you with, kind of thing. But I do vividly remember my pops laying that boundary of like, we are not friends, you know.
It's interesting you say that you kind of want to be a friend with like your parents or your father, but for me, yeah, I don't really know my dad outside of being my father. Like, I wish I knew him better as a person. You know, and I feel like because they've been parents pretty much most of their life at this point, that I don't know if they have an identity, specifically my father and my mother, but my dad, like, I don't know if they have an identity outside of being parents. So like, what is their identity? They're about to be empty nesters soon. I graduated college a couple of years ago. My brother's going to college. My sister is about to go to high school. Like, the clock is ticking. Like, what are you gonna do when you have no one in the house? And I don't think they know.
So how old are your parents now?
43.
Cool. So my parents became empty nesters, and I wanted to share this here anyway. My parents got divorced in 2017 after 25 years.
Okay.
And they divorced after we all left the house.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to tell you your parents when you get divorced. I'm more so saying like, I'm kind of living on the other side of that. And so when you just said that, it really resonated with me, because I had the same feeling when my brother was about to turn 18. Like, what's going to happen now that y'all have an empty nest? And it's just been crazy to watch it play out in
You
real
could
time.
look at it like the relationship between children and parents, and perhaps fathers and children, right? It's the glue in many ways that maybe hold a relationship together.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman. Joining me on the winter season premiere of In the Arena, rapper, songwriter, producer, and now television host, Rich Robbins.
I think we have these very confined stories in our head and confined boundaries in our head of what Black fathers can do and what they are and how they're able to love. And I want to show them that it's actually limitless.
Step in the Arena Tuesday, January 16th at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19, or stream at cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
I'm in my bag. So soft and so tender. One thing I want to touch on is education in the household, and how education was pushed in your household, particularly from the lens of your dad's, right? What was education like in your household? How was it kind of practiced and preached? I know for me, it was one of the most important things in the household. My dad is a lawyer, right? And so the American education system was like ultra important to him. I would come home with like report cards of all A's and a B. He'd be like, "What's up with the B?" You know, which had its like pros and cons to it. You know, I think there's like through therapy, I kind of like learned I have this like fear of disappointing people. You know, I think that's where it kind of comes from. But I also put 1,000% effort in everything that I do, right? So what was education like for you in the crib?
Yeah, really important. Similar to you. My dad is not degreed, doesn't have the best formal education himself, but it was something that was really, really important to him for us. Similar that anything less than an A, didn't cut it.
Yeah.
Didn't cut it. Even B's at times, even did more difficult classes and what have you. And so that's something that I've held on to, because it instilled in me that education is important, right? And not even just from a formal education sense, but learning in general.
That's a good point.
But it propelled me and made it really important to me that maybe there was some fear as to his expectations and his wants, and certainly disappointing him. But the primary focus was on me and me learning, me developing, me getting good grades and what that allowed me to do. And fortunately, education is the reason I came to the US, right? Having good grades was the reason I was able to get the scholarship. And so the lessons that he pushed me on to take pride and importance in education, it's paid dividends now,
right,
for his children.
Because I had teenage parents, my parents weren't initially able to go to college because they was raising their kid, and you kind of talked about it earlier. I'm 24 now. Like at this age, I would have had a 6-year-old son.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine, you know, because I don't have kids, but I am the first male on my mom's side of the family to graduate from high school, let alone go to college. And then both of my parents, went to for-profit online universities, so DeVry, University of Phoenix. So they did, e-learning before it was cool type thing.
Right.
So in a way, like I feel like a first generation college student, because in terms of like having a degree, yes, they have their bachelor's, but the social capital that you get from being on campus and understanding how to navigate all of those things is something that I had to learn on my own. And yeah, it was kind of a similar thing as you. It's like, okay, if you get a B, like, that's not good enough. And then if you do get all A's, like, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so you're not really applauded. Like, at first it was like,
Right.
okay, yeah, like, good job. But like, as I continue to do well, it was kind of like the expectation. And like you said, like through therapy and things like that, I realized I needed more of that affirmation and more of that positive reinforcement. Like, there was a lot of negative reinforcement, but it wasn't so much as like what I needed. So
Yeah.
I have the same thing with the people pleasing and not wanting to be a disappointment, and that can stem into sports as well, because my dad was a really good basketball player, and that was my first love. And I never felt like I could live up to his expectations, or wasn't as good as him. So, my dad quit his team, high school team, like his junior year. He was really good. He could have played in college, potentially professionally. So I kind of played basketball because my dad loved it. He's a big Jordan fan, et cetera. But yeah, it was just like I could never, compare, and I always compare myself. So that was hard for me as a kid.
Like I said with the divorce, there's this like stark change in the way parenting was when I got to high school. My sister is a genius. You know what I'm saying? My sister got like a 36 on the ACT, went to Penn, University of Pennsylvania on a full ride, which is an Ivy League school, you know what I'm saying? And she's a year and a half over me. So in my opinion, there was like an emphasis on like, get good grades. Like they weren't, I don't think they were thinking as far ahead as like, we gonna get our kids to college. There was no college fund, none of that. Just like in the moment, get it done, get it done, get it done. And we became self-sufficient in that because we were getting those good grades. I never got like less than a C before, maybe a couple C's before high school. I did awful in high school. Like I barely passed, graduated from high school. And I think a lot of the reason is because once they saw how good my sister and self-sufficient my sister was in that much more difficult environment, they thought that I would do the same thing. And I don't know what was going on in their relationship, but they became a lot more hands-off when I got to high school. And I think one of my biggest frustrations till this day is that they were not more hands-on. He bought me a drum machine for my 8th grade graduation gift, which to this day is probably the best gift I ever got because it leads to who I am now. You know what I'm saying? But when I'm making beats in the crib, although they're supporting it, there isn't that thought process to be like, okay, he's failing at Morgan Park. Should we put him in a liberal arts school? Should we tap into the thing that he loves more instead of continually watching him fail? And I think that by, my senior year, they gave up on me completely. I only went to college because of my uncle. And the woman I was dating at the time begged me to go to the school, and it just so happened my uncle also graduated from NIU. And so I don't know if my dad or mom made the call, but partway through the summer, my uncle calls me and like, let's go up to DeKalb. And that is how college happens for me. They were hands off completely in my college education. My mother is degreed up. My mother has a doctorate. My dad he's not degreed up. You know what I'm saying? And I think in a lot of ways, I don't know like I said, I don't know what the path was, but I feel very strongly that my parents and my dad kind of like, and maybe he didn't have the capacity, but gave up on education once it got hard. The one thing he schooled us in from day one and that I'm so thankful for is street smarts. We grew up in the hood, you know what I'm saying? So you have this Christian family on the south side of like the hood, the south side of Chicago, you know what I'm saying? And like the way I navigate the world, I think it's solely because of how like my father taught me to, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm hyper aware, like I be on it, I be peeping scene before scene even happen. And it's not because of an OG or like it's because of my dad, you feel me? And so I definitely give him that education. I think that education is very, very valuable. Like yes, we focus on school, but what does it look like to teach your kid how to move through like social situations and like how to move through the many things that might get thrown at them when they're not at school? And I think my dad did a phenomenal job of equipping us for that, you know what I'm saying?
So Matt, I think you brought up a really good point with your answer to the education question, right? And how tough that journey was. And I'm curious for all of y'all, what is one tough lesson that you learned from your pops that at the time it was really tough, right? But in hindsight, there is some type of gold in that lesson. Whether you agree with how it went down or not, what is the gold that you got from it?
A combination of my father and my mother in terms of their advice when I was a young teen was around the friendships that I kept, that I think helped steer me the right path and helped me get to where I am today, was around, are the people that you are spending the most time with in line with the person you are trying to be?
Come on,
and
bro.
what you want to get out of life.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctively, again, secondary school in the UK, I'm about 14, going on 15, and we finish school at 16, right? So there's some tests that are coming up, and those tests help dictate, do you get on to the next program that will help you get into university eventually? And it was just a very specific conversation lesson around, are those people in line with where you want to be, and are they helping you to fulfill what that looks like for you? Right. And at the time, as a teenager, you're kind of like, I just want to hang out with my friends. Like, I want to do the fun stuff. I want to be going out. And at the time, I didn't like it. But then fast forward several years, and I sit and I'm so thankful, so grateful that they pushed that on me to make sure that I was spending time in the right places with the right people and doing the right things. Because otherwise, things could have looked a lot different.
Man, that's such a difficult thing to convey to people in my adult life. Is like,
it's true.
I'm very conscious of the people that I keep around because of that alignment. 100%. I'm like, you know, and it's no diss on nobody if you don't match with my alignment, you got a different alignment, you know. But we can absolutely be respectful to each other and have different alignments. But I picked that up from my pops too. Yeah.
If anything, I've doubled down and now I'm older.
Yes.
Even more, because time is even more valuable.
And you got more to protect too. 100%. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say something similar. You kind of alluded to it earlier. Like, I'm from the west side of Chicago, so similar thing. Grew up in Austin, and then moved to Maywood, which is pretty much the same. And just like, you know, just knowing how to move and being very street smart. Like, my parents just really instilled that in me. And like you said, you are the company you keep. Like, if you're in a room full of like 4 dummies, you're gonna be the 5th one. Type shit. Like, so that was kind of how I was taught. And yeah, the same thing like you said. Like, I know how to move. Like, I am a social butterfly, but like, I am able to know the dynamic of relationships. Like, if the love is quid pro quo or transactional, like, that's cool. Like, as long as you show your hand and like don't front your move. But like, if I know and I feel in my heart that like someone loves me unconditionally, then I know to keep those people close. So it's like, I know how to play the game. Like, it's kind of like The Spook Who Sat by the Door. I don't know if you read that book, but Nipsey Hussle kind of talked about that. But that's how I feel. Like, I grew up on the west side. I went to an Ivy League school like your sister. So like, I know how to do, you know, how to play that. And I have a corporate job, but I'm also an artist. So like, I feel like a chameleon. But that's kind of like something that I learned just from my parents, being able to know how to code switch. And now I'm at a point where I'm financially stable where I don't got to. I could be how I want to be. But I knew how to do that.
My dad really taught me how to finesse white spaces very, very well. You know, I do. We could just keep it at that. You know. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's real. It's two parts to my answer. I think my first is exactly what y'all said. I think the lesson of like, my father's biggest gift, I think, is discernment. He's phenomenal. Like, discernment, when I heard the definition of it, I was like, I have that and I got it from him.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And so he would do this thing where, like, I also think he was a little judgmental, which I had to unlearn. But he would judge all of my friends. He would discern all of my friends. The moment they would come around, he would discern them. And I hated that shit. I'd be like, bro, you a hater. You just don't want me to have no friends, blah, blah, blah. And in hindsight, he was 100% correct about everything he said about the people who came around, whether good or bad.
Right.
And I thought that was beautiful. There was this other thing where, you know, I love sports, but I never got to like play them because there wasn't confidence there. And he always would tell me like, bro, you're gonna get better at it if you just do it with confidence, like believe in yourself. And I'd be like, once again, shut the fuck up. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? You're not there, this is hard. And the one thing I am good at basketball is shooting. Anybody can tell you like my skill is shooting the ball.
I seen it, yeah.
It came solely from hooping in college with all these like real hoopers and then getting sick of people talking about me. Because I'm that nigga, regardless of if not I can hoop. So you're
Let's
not going to
go.
talk crazy to
Let's
me, you know
go.
what I'm saying? You know better than to talk crazy to me on this court, you feel me? And so the one thing I had to find was the confidence to play my game, even if I'm not a hooper, you know what I'm saying? And once again, he was correct about that. And I think that was all first part. Second part is the tough lesson of the school thing, you know what I'm saying, the education thing. I think it was very difficult at the time, but what blossomed from that was me learning that there's so much value in hands-on love, you know what I'm saying? Like, I needed that hands-on love, and luckily my Uncle Walter, you know, gave me that to go to college. And my college experience was, to this day, the most impactful experience in my entire life. I am so glad I went to Northern Illinois University. And I want to say the school because it wasn't that I went to college, it's that I went to NIU. And I think everybody should have their own unique college experience, you know? But without that, the person I was that summer before, like when people, this is serious, when people would come up to me and be like, well, you go, everybody's telling their school, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm going to Crib University. And like, people would laugh at the joke, but like, in hindsight, it hurts me that I was walking around saying that because I was looking forward to doing nothing with my life. And it's like the weirdest thing, you know what I'm saying? But I got there and I'm glad I went there because I learned that there's so much more out there than the insular box you might grow up in, whether that's related to your parents, whether that's related to your church. And now on the other side of that difficult high school, fun college, beautiful college, other side of that, I'm a totally different person on my own volition because they did take that hands-off approach. And so I'm glad that at least I had to grow up fast, you know what I'm saying? And I learned how to be an adult at 18.
That's beautiful. You said two things that really stuck out to me. Number one, it was that you learn how to play your game, right? And I think that's what my pops taught me. Whether, you know, he took the right angles on teaching me that or not, I learned how to play my game as a metaphor, right? Like just what my game is, I learned how to play that. And number two, just touching on your uncle, the idea that, you know, your father doesn't have to be your biological father at all. You know, there are a lot of father figures that I have in my life, and I've been very fortunate about that. But we are talking about our biological dads. But just to throw that out there, that, you know, your uncle very much, in a way, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, picked up some of the slack that you felt like was lacking in your life. You know, and that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. You know, to have multiple men that at some point you could recollect, you helped raise me.
On the series premiere of Hustle, Play, Love, we'll talk about the DEI drain post George Floyd. We'll also pose the question, did Tyler Perry put black women on baller alert? Two relationship experts will tackle the topic of financial imbalance in relationships. Tuesday, January 16th at 7:30 p.m. on CanTV, cable channel 19, or stream live on cantv.org or on the CanTV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
I'm in my bag. So soft and so tender. You know, I got one more question for y'all. Can you tell us what it takes to be a good father?
I think for me, it's a combination of two things. A lot of what we've discussed, right? I feel very fortunate and very blessed that I've had and continue to have my father around. And although that was tough love, there are good lessons from that I've taken with me and I will take forward. So I will take that and implement with my princess, my daughter, my future children as well. The other part, though, I think is there's beauty, similar to what you were saying, right? Is the experiences or the certain types of things that you didn't get, as long as you're aware that you didn't get them and perhaps they would have been beneficial, that's the lesson learned that you can then implement, right?
Yeah.
And so for me and my daughter and my children, it's perhaps being a little bit more emotional and supportive. It's knowing that feelings are okay to talk about, because I didn't really talk about that with my father, right? And so I can be supportive in some of the similar ways that he was, right? Very competitive, funny, there was a lot of banter and held high standards, but I can also be loving and caring and supportive when things aren't as well, or perhaps that she is down. And so I think it's the combination of those two things, the experiences I had, the experiences I didn't, that I as a father will take forward for my children.
But that balance between the tough love and then that vulnerability, you know, that being, you know, be allowing your child to be emotionally vulnerable to 100%. You and holding that close to you, 100%. You know.
What they said, and I think patience, man. Like patience is the biggest thing. Like I think that the one critique that I have of my own father is the amount of impatience that he showed throughout our upbringing. I think I love my dad, so that's not like a diss. It's just one chink in the armor. And I think that we all grow impatient with different situations, but I think that when you're talking about the developing mind, like you have to understand what you're dealing with. Like, and I think that a lot of times parents, although they say I'm not one of your little friends, they like critique and they parent like they're dealing with an adult. You feel me?
Yeah.
And so to me, like you the wherewithal to know like, oh, you are 14 and you're doing that because your brain is not there yet. And if what would I have done when I was 14? I love when parents go there and be like, I probably would have did the same thing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing. Like when I observe the way that my brother-in-law is with their kids, he's so loving. And it's like he bowls, like his son's a bowler, he loves bowling. They be playing video games together, like it's and I think so there's a lot of patience in the way my sister and my brother-in-law parent. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Patience, and then what y'all said as well.
Yeah, I feel like it comes down to, I mean, the same fundamental principles of being a good person. Like, I think it could span across gender or whatever the case may be. It's just like empathy. Like, as a father and as a parent in general, you have to know that you're gonna fuck up. And I feel like there's a lot of times in my life where I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be like my parents in this way. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. But at the end of the day, like reflecting on that, we're not going to be perfect. And then our kids might say the same shit we said about our parents, but it's like, I think the fundamental difference is being able to be more vulnerable, being able to show more emotion, and being able to kind of model that and be an example so that, you know, your kids feel psychologically safe or feel like they can be your friend. Because I think that's important. Yes, it's a power dynamic of you are my parent, but also like you're my friend and I can come to you, or else you're going to be more secluded and you're not going to open up. And I feel like that's how I was with my parents a lot growing up. So yeah, I would say empathy and just being able to listen, because you're not going to always understand, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need someone to listen, you know?
Yeah, and like, I mean, you're the parent, you're maybe the friend, but you're also just a human being, you know? Like that's, even though that's your child, you are still a human just trying to figure it out. And I think to a certain extent, maybe that's okay to just kind of like to show that side of yourself to your kid every now and then.
There's power in vulnerability, even as a parent.
Yeah.
And I think especially as you get older, perhaps into some of the teenage years, that's really important.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for sitting down with me. I think we discovered a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. So I appreciate y'all. And blessings to y'all, man. For real.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank you, man.
They're great.
So soft and so tender. Daddy in the kitchen and he told me, son, listen. He said, you don't have to play the part that they wrote for you. You don't have to play the part. I'm like, how he do that twice? Why that boy so nice? Why he cuff the mic like a baby bite? So soft and tender. Bet he like that in any weather. Bet he only bite if he don't get it twisted. I be in the gym ready to box. Why would I not? Niggas out here creeping hard on the block. My pops taught me if you can't win the fight with your brain,